Hey you beautiful buccaneers, for people who don't know me, I am Captain Falcore, longtime Sea of Thieves content creator, Sea of Thieves partner, and part-time emissary of chaos on the high seas. Rare, in a moment of questionable judgment, asked if I'd be willing to give you all a brief rundown of the game's most iconic villain. Naturally, I said yes, and when Rare asks, I deliver, because the story is my driving force. A tale of betrayal, legacy, and the fight for the Sea of Thieves. It began on a forgotten rock in the middle of the sea, uncharted, nameless, and quiet, but not for long. A mysterious woman appeared. She wore no name, spoke no words, and hid her face behind a mask. The world would come to know her as the Masked Stranger. But the Masked Stranger wasn't always the brooding, silent type. Once upon a time, back when Port Merrick was a humble outpost known as Golden Sands, she was just a humble blacksmith with big dreams and a hammer to match. Her grand ambition? To become the world's greatest weaponsmith. Unfortunately, her rise took a slight detour when she stumbled upon an ancient, definitely not suspicious cannon resting peacefully on the seabed. Rather than leaving well enough alone, or asking why a cannon would radiate the aura of 1,000 screaming souls, she salvaged the strange cannon. Her plan? Crafting a line of bespoke cursed cannonballs. Unbeknownst to her, this particular cannon once belonged to the Burning Blade, the flagship of the delightfully evil Flameheart. And wouldn't you know it, the cannon came with a free subscription to whispered, unsolicited career advice. Flameheart's whispers from beyond the grave twisted her ambition into fury, her flesh into something far less fresh, and her side hustle into a full-blown cursed arms race. Now undead and slightly irritable, she didn't stop at cannonballs. Using the cursed metal, she figured out how to summon skeleton ships and staff them with crews who don't ask for pay or time off. Of course, we didn't know any of this at the time. We just assumed she was another mysterious newcomer with questionable tastes in masks. At her side was Stitcher Jim, a jittery schemer with the energy of a man who drank cursed grog for breakfast. Together, they began to gather relics, build structures, and whisper secrets to anyone willing to listen. Their efforts turned that lifeless island into something more: Reaper's hideout, a fortress, a symbol, and a warning. But as always, when something new is built in Sea of Thieves, someone else is waiting to claim it. Behind the scenes stood a darker figure, cloaked, quiet, and entirely too fond of smoldering entrances. He worked in the background whilst the Masked Stranger and Stitcher Jim laid the foundation, and when the moment was right, he stepped forward. The Servant of the Flame. The Masked Stranger? Nowhere to be seen. Stitcher Jim? Pushed aside. The Reaper's bones? Now under new management. Their reward for loyalty? Irrelevance. Not everything is what it seems at first glance, and this figure has a secret. And then came the first great turning point. In the tall tale, The Seabound Soul, we met Sir Arthur Pendragon, a noble hero from another age, determined to free a tormented soul trapped within a cursed relic. His heart was pure, his aim noble, his judgment, tragically flawed. Because the soul he freed was none other than Captain Flameheart. Not just a ghost, a conqueror, returned from the brink. His flaming visage erupted into the sky, massive, seething, and forever shouting. Subtlety was not his strong suit, but he didn't need it. He had presence. The seas trembled, ghost fleets began to appear, harassing every ship that dared to cross their path, and the Reaper's bones, born of the Masked Stranger's vision, now swore loyalty to the Servant of Flame, not her. Then, in the first official adventure, Shrouded Islands, the veil was finally lifted. The Servant of Flame was revealed not as a mere follower, but as Flameheart's son. A son shaped in fire and vengeance, a son who wasn't simply bringing his father back, he was resurrecting a legacy. This wasn't about loyalty anymore, it was blood, family, and flame. Suddenly, the Reaper's rise made perfect sense. This was more than a conquest, it was inheritance. But where darkness rises, so too does resistance. The Pirate Lord, weathered but unshaken, and Bell, a guardian of ancient knowledge, knew they couldn't stand against the new threat alone. They turned to the Ancients, the first people of the Sea of Thieves, long since lost to time and now dwelling in the Sea of the Damned. a magical place where one's memories can turn into reality. A pact was made. If they could help revive the Ancients' greatest warrior, the Ancients would stand beside them against the coming storm. It was a risky plan, but one forged in hope and in desperation. Then, of course, Stitcher Jim reappeared, because of course he did. No longer just a meddler, Jim had been changed, twisted into something terrible. Through the events of the Tall Tale Heart of Fire, we learnt the truth. He believed he was summoning an Ashen Lord to serve Flameheart, but the ritual didn't bring forth a servant. He was the vessel. Stitcher Jim became the Ashen Lord, betrayed, transformed, cursed. He was no longer a man, he was fire given form. And then, like so many pawns before him, he was cast aside. But the damage was done. Even as Pendragon, Bell, and the Pirate Lord shattered Flameheart's skull and ended the ritual of the resurrection, the Servant of Flame was already preparing something worse. From the ashes of the battle, he retrieved the cursed remains of two broken souls, Stitcher Jim and Captain Flameheart. One, a madman, the other, a tyrant. Fused together, they became something unholy. And from the Dark Union, Captain Flameheart was reborn. Not a whisper in the sky, not a ghost, but a force of living flame. Armored, furious, and walking the seas once more. And with him returned his legendary ship, the Burning Blade. A brimstone-sailed terror of old, cutting through the mist and storm, its cannons cold and merciless. But Flameheart's return is not just about conquest, not anymore. As the Burning Blade prowls the seas, it has begun uncovering ancient burial sites, long hidden and long forgotten. These aren't just tombs, they're prisons, resting places for the banished ancients, cast out by their kin not because they were weak, but because they thought just like him. They were warriors, pirates in spirit, believers in strength over balance, and they were silenced for it. But Flameheart remembers, and now he plans to awaken them, to harness their knowledge, to command their power, and to reshape the Sea of Thieves not as it was, but as it should be in his eyes. A kingdom of fire, ruled by the worthy. Now the Reapers rally behind their resurrected master. The Pirate Lord continues to fight for balance. Bell calls upon ancient allies, and far from the front lines, in the shadow and silence, the masked stranger waits. Forgotten, betrayed, now with new allies known as the Dark Brethren, but not broken. Because every betrayal leaves a scar, every scar tells a story, and this one is far from over. So that's cheerful.